everybody's here with me. Just relax, eat your popcorn. Hopefully we will have a video of this if this works, okay? So let's try it. Assignment 6. There's two parts. One is creating the landscape modifications. So from the one we have, we will create a couple curves, a couple cuts, and we will somehow deal with the landscape alone, okay? The second part is exploded analysis. Basically, we select different parts of a model, we move them vertically, and we do a make 2D of our project, not with the site, okay? So let's go step by step. I'm going to move this away. Go to Rhino. And I'm going to just pretty much turn off everything except my model and the different parts, okay? So you should have a little bit of this organization, which is buildings in pink, terrain in red, water in blue, side curve, I'm going to leave it for now, and street lines, whatever, we just turn it off. And what I did is place the landscape in a layer called landscape, turn off and turn on, and black color. And then I have three layers. One model A, it's Stevens, and model B is Christina, no? And model C, Jackie, no? What's it? What? Oh, sorry. So we have those placed also on top of the surfaces. And again, it's for kids, so they could come in here and do some weird stuff and, you know, play around between each of the pieces. Again, each of them in a landscape. We did some paths. One of them is here, another one there, and they're kind of connecting the perimeter. Not necessarily exactly, but, you know, pretty much connecting the perimeter area. Okay, so the first thing we have to do from the top view is a curve. So what I'm going to do is a curve, press enter, degree 3. I'm not going to snap, so that's why I have this disabled. And it doesn't have to be exactly as the curve we have already. I'm just going to create it a little more, you know, bigger than the other one. In a way, that curve entails the entire model. So if your model, for whatever reason, was bigger than the side curve, you know, we can just forget about it and make another one that is a little bit bigger. Always within the terrain, of course. We're going to do an offset. If we type offset, enter, you can say different distance by pressing on distance and say 10. And there you have the curve. And I'm going to go to the perspective, control tabbing, select the first curve, turn on the control points. When I press the center button, I usually have it here as a shortcut, but you know, it's this one, point on. And that's if you are in the standard one, you should see this toolbar. Turn on the control points, and what I'm going to move is these points vertically. Now if you have this, the gizmo, remember in new in 5 you should press gumball if you don't see it. I'm just moving them a little bit and respecting the entrances here, okay? So probably that one should be a little bit lower. That one could go a little bit higher. And this one, so I'm pressing shift to add more, although there's a connection there, so I'm just going to select these two. Higher. This one very high, why not? Something a little bit more funky. These two like that. This one, and this one, and even that one could go quite high, why not? And that one could go as well a little bit high. And this one higher. Again, it's turning on the control points, escaping to get out of those control points. And what I did is move those curves, this one here, vertically, some of their points, okay? I did first the offset, so that one's exactly in the surface, in the C-plane, which is the 0, 0 surface coordinate, okay? I'm going to put those in a new layer, call them line work. Oops, capital letters there. Line work, right click, change object layer, and you can turn off and turn on anytime you want. Okay, I'm going to turn off the models, and I'm going to extract the points from this surface that we had before. To do that, the command is solid points on. This is something new in Rhino 5. That, what it does is show the points, but actually they're not there for us to use afterwards. Okay, so what you can do is select the control points of the surface and say extract. Okay, if you extract, I think it's just extract. Whoop. Points. There you go, extract points. That will give us, if we escape, a series of points that we could move and do whatever we want. Okay, what I'm going to do is select the points, so I can select everything, control, select the surface to deselect the surface, and create a new layer. Call it points new. Right click, change object layer, and they are there now. Okay, good. Points, models, everything is there in different layers. Line work is the ones I did before. And here's the thing, what I'm going to do now is mesh patch. And we have done this before with only points, remember? Well, here's the trick. I was actually bothering you by creating points out of curves, doing the extract points out of curves. You can do a mesh patch using curves and points. So hey, mesh patch, enter, select the curves and the points, enter, enter, and there we have it. Now if you see this in red and the part that's behind in gray, it means that the normals are flipped, but you know, we don't really care for now. What I'm going to do is select that one and say mesh to nerve, which is, remember when you do a mesh patch, you are actually creating a mesh. We want always a nerve. So if you do mesh to nerves, it creates that as a nerves, but be careful. I've seen many people rendering this afterwards as if they were totally happy about the result. If I select the surface, there's actually two guys here. Okay, there's a mesh and there's a poly surface. We want the poly surface only. That's why many of your renderings are weird. Whenever there's a conflict of two elements in the exact same position, the rendering is not going to become clean and clear. Okay, so we select the mesh and delete. Okay, I'm going to also flip normals just to put the, actually it's flip, to put the back face of those faces looking down. Okay, not that it matters for now, but there we go, we have that. We're going to create a new layer and say landscape new. Right click, change object layer, and you know you can move your layers by clicking on move down. I'm going to put it down because it's much important than other things. Okay, turn off line work, point news, and we have our surface. At this point I would recommend saving because it's a point to be proud about, and being careful not to lose your information, just save it. This is a new landscape. Okay, as you can see, by placing those curves we did a patch that understood both the points and the curves. So this patch, this surface, is perfectly aligned with the bottom area. If I go to the, by control tabbing to the front view, this is perfectly flat, you see? So now it's going to merge very nicely into the landscape. Okay, good. Next step. Well, there's something weird we have to do. In our exploded analysis, I want to have separated my paths and my areas from the rest of the landscape. So we have to check on select and use one of these that will help us select different parts. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is explode this. By exploding it, afterwards what I get is the different and single units of surfaces, the triangles, okay? So I need to select, all these paths only, and the areas. Well, this could take me for a while if I want to go one by one. So there are many techniques here in the select tools. I can select points, the inverse of a selection. There's many ways that you could use these ones for the future, but I'm going to select this option, select by boundary curve. So first I need to create a curve that is close. I'm going to create curve, disable my snapping points, and I'm going to create a curve around the areas that I want to select, and not being too careful about what is coming in or not. You can just zoom in and go around both your areas again and your paths. No? So for example, this is very difficult to detect. This is another path. I'm going to go around that. It seems like a lot of time to go around, but you will see the benefits of doing it this way very soon. Oops. If you get inside of an area, you want to go back, just go Control C and you go back a couple steps. No problem. And again, you go around. There we go. And you finish, and I wouldn't want to get those, why not? You close the curve, and here's the command. Select boundary curves to select the curve. Bah! It selects, I guess I closed this incorrectly, no? So you can always escape, select the curve, control points on, go to the wireframe to see this. And you can just move this a bit so you make sure that you select that path as well. There we go. So that curve should be better fit, okay? You select the curve again and selects whatever is surrounding. You can always go to the perspective and select more elements if you want by pressing Shift and adding to the selection. Like for example, this connection wasn't added correctly, so I'm just going to add a couple of them. And there we go. We're going to create a new layer while it's selected and say path top. Right click, change object layer, make sure that they're there, okay? And you want a different color so you see that clean. Let's turn it off so we see what we got. Again, I exploded, I selected with the boundary. I don't even need this curve anymore, so I can delete it. And I split it in a way, what is path and area from what is going to be landscape, okay? Okay, nice. At this point I want to join these landscapes and say join. And we're going to get islands of landscape, you see? I can select each of them. For an obvious reason, these two guys are not going to be joined. They're not touching each other anymore, okay? I could do the same for my recently created layer called top paths. Select them and join. So it's one element there, okay? Good there. We're going to do some more stuff to this landscape. Typical of landscape is creating a crater. So I'm going to create a crater. I know it sounds like weird, but I'm going to create a curve, degree 3, and I'm going to just do something like a little bit crazy here. Enter. Enter again to repeat the command. Enter. Enter to repeat the command. Enter. Let me go to the perspective so you see what I have done. And wireframe. That curve. And two curves here. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select the curves by pressing Shift to add them and extrude them. It goes up. Let me do it shaded mode. See those landscapes? I'm going to select them and take them down, pressing the blue arrow. And I'm going to use those. Actually, I should have done before a different thing. Let me go back. I need to trim out those curves. So I'm pressing trim, select the surface, trim out the curve. So the curve is exactly inside of the terrain. Okay, TR for trim, select the surface, enter, select the curve to get that out. TR, select the surface, enter. There you go. And wireframe, and search for the curves. Curve, Shift, Shift, extrude. You will see why I did this. Shaded mode, take it down. I'm going to use this surfaces to trim, I'm going to save at this point, to trim out the craters. And now you will understand perfectly, I think, what I'm saying. I'm going to say trim, cutting objects, my surface, enter, the centerpiece. Bah. We'll see how that's going to look. The same again. TR, cutting objects, in this case I have two, 1 and 2, enter, crater. More, TR. Here's the thing, if I try to TR these two guys to cut the top part of this surface, we're going to end up with this problem that this has no solution. So we need to turn on the path top. TR, enter, cutting objects, surface, shift, surface, shift, surface, enter, out. TR, enter, surface, shift, surface, shift, surface, shift, surface, shift, surface. Actually, all of the surface we need to select. Enter, select, select. What mess have we done? Let's flip this guy, because it's in red there. And let's flip this guy. The normals of that face will go now to the other side. We have just created the crater effect. We did a trim using this surface to trim out this line for that one. Huh? See how nice it looks? So kids are going to be able to come here through the crater and they will have these little bridges. Oh, this one didn't trim out, no? Let's see if it works now. TR, select, select, enter, trim out. Now it's good. Okay, I'm going to use now, turn on the terrain, the old one we did. TR, enter, select the terrain, enter, trim out the bottom parts. So they're exactly trimmed there and there. Turn off. Clean. Okay. I'm going to turn off my terrain top. Actually, I'm going to leave it on. And we need some lines. So this I will explain more carefully next class. But if you select everything, there's a bunch of tools here. If you press that one, that gives us curves, duplicate borders from each of those. So for example, if I have a plane here, like that, I can select, give me the borders of this plane, pop, and it gives me the curves from this plane. So you can get pretty much any curve you need from each of the planes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, at this point, select everything, and say, give me the borders of all of that. Put in a new layer and call it curve work. Oops, right click, rename, curve work, right click, change object layer, so I can turn off everything else, start working on my surface. I never change those. I can call the layer something like crater, select those surfaces. So for example, in this case, I could go to select, tab, and say give me, where is it? Select blocks here, select polysurfaces, no, sorry, surfaces, and it selects only the surfaces, and I can put them in crater. Turn off. So this is a nice diagram, for example. It's all curves, each of the curves that come from each of the elements. I'm going to go to the top view. I do not want some of them. I'm going to explode the curves, delete all the top ones, and the bottom ones, because I don't want the curves from the top of the crater and stuff. You will see why. I'm going to go again to the perspective, and these curves come in very handy to do what I want to do right now. Select, oops, missing this guy. Select, join, and now I can do a couple things. I can use these surfaces to trim out from the terrain all. I can say trim, or you can even say split, but we're going to use trim, and it says cutting objects, the curve, enter the center. Whoops, something weird there. Interesting. What you can always do is select the curves if it doesn't work, and say the same thing, such as extrude them. And taking them down and see if this one works. Trim. Whoops. Oh, I know what the problem is. I think the problem is that these guys are not. There's different groups, I guess. Yeah. So there were duplicated faces there. Let's see if it works now. Trim, cutting objects, the curve, enter. Nope, still not working. Funny. Let's extrude. Oh, I know what's happening. Okay, so what it means is that there's several curves within the curve. That's a different problem, actually. So what you can do, for example, is get again those. Let's go back in time before the joining process. Get rid of the vertical elements. It's the same as I did before. And even if you think this is correct, in a way we need to make sure that there's no duplicated lines. So you can say select, dupe. You say select dupe. Oh, no, not duplicated, so it's intersected. See what was happening? There's two guys. I don't know why it joined though. Duplicated. Okay. Duplicated. Huh. I know what to do. Explode. Select, duplicated, and nothing is duplicated. Interesting. Oh, okay, I know. It's getting the curves as well. Anyway, let's hide those. Curve, hide. We have to delete all these guys. Those are the ones duplicated. Curve, hide. Let's get rid of those. Oops. show join. Join. There we go. See if it says planner surface. Now it's working. If it doesn't cut it, we'll do it some other way. Nevertheless, so let's say trim curve, enter. Perfect. So it was a problem of having too many curves duplicated and a curve next to a line, etc. So this is the cut we want. Okay, whoops. Let's go to shaded mode. So again, I extracted the curves around. There's only one curve enclosed, and I trim out the center part. Okay, great. So at this point, we have the top of the path. We have the new landscape. We have the crater surfaces. And we have our three models, C, A, B. I'm going to use a different for that color because the model B is the same as the path. Let's just say green, which we don't have. And these are the elements we need to display. So at this point, the best is to save. Think of this file, let's say save as, and call it like render file. You say OK, and you keep it exactly as it is. This is your final project, by the way. You will just render it nicely, and you will present it nicely in your midterm. Okay. This is it. You render it again, and you're going to have the buildings here, etc., etc. But what I'm asking for next class is to say File, Save As, and do an exploded analysis of this file. Exploded. And why I save it 2 times? Well, because I'm going to do a mess out of this. I'm going to start selecting things and moving them vertically to be able to explain this in different ways. Now, I don't need this guy, so I'm going to just delete that. How do we do an exploded analysis? We're going to do a make 2D at the end, and that you pretty much know, hopefully. An exploded analysis, what it does is place each of the ingredients, conceptually speaking, like terrain, like crater, like path, like model A, B, C, and move them vertically to the right, to the left, and prepare a camera carefully so we see everything in the best possible way before we do the make 2D. And then it's Illustrator world, okay? I'm going to start opening Illustrator while I speak. Close that and start moving things vertically, okay? At this point, I don't know where the camera is, so it's a little tricky. I'm going to turn off the terrain. I'm going to say, how do we select, for example, the craters without needing to go once and another once, okay? Let's turn off, I think I have the curves. Curve work out. In order to select the layer, you can just right click, for example, the crater, select objects if you right click, and all those objects will be selected. Now remember to save as before doing anything, because obviously you don't want to render your final model like that, okay? That's why we saved as. I'm going to say path top, select objects, and move them on top of that. I'm going to select, by pressing Control, Model A, B, and C, right click, select objects. You can select several layers, move them up. The landscape. Well, I'm going to select the landscape new, right click, select objects, move them up. Turn off again my terrain. Something that we could do, for example, is turn off the terrain and turn on the control, the curves that work, and we say surface, sorry, planner surface. select those two surfaces that come out of that, new layer, and call it terrain project. Right click, change object layer, turn off the curves. So we can use that. We don't have to turn on that one and have the whole thing, which is a little crazy. We can use that as a lower layer, okay? Now for the render we want that one obviously, because we want that terrain to come in nice and smooth. But for the 3D exploded analysis could be like that. So now it's a moment of starting selecting parts and move them so they're nicely differentiated in its vertical position, no? You select the best possible angle for your Make 2D. Now this is probably not the best because the landscape is on top of the crater, on top of the other one. So you either start moving them vertically even more, then you have to move your camera, or you can do something like select this level, put it down there, that level, put it down here, this level, say here, that level. So at this point we're not so careful about, you know, how we're destroying or deconfiguring our model in terms of exactness. It's more about how do we do exploded analysis the best possible way to explain this project. So now I can move and really zoom in a little bit more. I can move these guys down. Even move these ones underneath. Move the angle. I think at this point it is a nice camera. I can understand these guys are on top of the path. This one, I'm going to create some annotation lines relating it to the next level, and this one's going to talk about the crater, and this one is going to come down nicely to the next level, no? So we have to think of this as a beginning step to take it to Illustrator and then to InDesign, and in InDesign placing more lines that refer each level with each other. So I would probably save the view if I'm happy with it. Press save. We call it exploded. Okay, it comes there. Anytime I want, I can go back. And now here's the thing. You select your elements, make 2D. No secrets about that. Current view. For this specific case, we don't want the 4 views. Show hidden lines, show viewport rectangle, maintain source layers. So if I say okay, it's going to take a little while, and then it's going to create all these nice layers. Now I saw somebody going, and that was Steven, I think you remember, having this in perspective and saying here, hey, take it, export selected to Illustrator. Well, no, always you go to the top view. Another thing that could happen to you is that you deselect this, and now you cannot select all this mess that is on top of your elements, okay? Well, no problem. We go to our layers, select right under Make 2D, the first one and the last one, shift, right click, select objects. Move it out so you can select it anytime you want and as many times you want, okay? Select, export selected, Illustrator, exploded. I'm going to say A, save, okay, go to Illustrator, open, search for that Illustrator file, press E for exploded, there it is, open. And here's a step that some people also have in trouble. You not just open and work this. You first go to open, you create a, to new, you create a new document and you call it like exploded again and say B or something. And you make sure it is a tabloid because this, in this case, is going to be an entire spread of our InDesign. So that's tabloid, okay? Landscape, say okay. There is. So now it's the time of selecting Control C before Control V here. I'm going to make sure that this says paste. Remember, layers, check. If it is checked, you're good. If not, check it. That means that if I paste Control V, you're going to have all the layers in it, okay? Press V and you can scale the whole thing nicely until it fits perfectly and even bigger. Okay, if you want to, I don't know, we could center it by Control A to select everything and just use the arrows until it's center, or just select the whole thing, move it to the center. And here's the question everybody's having as, you know, I hate Illustrator. Well, Illustrator, if you know the A, B, and C of these steps after making 2D, it's quite straightforward. The circles is to select an entire layer. So what I'm going to do is search for all the visible layers and press the circle and press Control and press the next circle for the visible. Control, visible, 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 and visible. That's good. I'm going to say stroke. If it's not here, must be somewhere else under Windows, stroke. Let's find it. There is. It was there, no? And I'm going to say 0.05 color. Say, oops. Why is this happening? Remember these two options here in the bottom? I'm changing to black the fill. I don't want fill. I do want stroke black. Okay? It's good. If I deselect that by pressing anywhere, and even though it might seem a little crazy, the reason is that the hidden lines are white and very thick and they're on top of the black lines. Okay, so we can go to hidden lines, select again by pressing Control all the hidden lines, and again pressing the circle allows us to select the hidden entirely, and you can say thin, even 0.25, dash line. Now 12 is normally very big, so don't keep it there, just take it to 0.5. Depending on the scale of your model, could be one or another, and we do want a grayscale, something like this one. Much better. Could be even greater and thinner. How do we do that? We have to select again, unfortunately. But you know, selecting the circles, it's a very convenient thing. So just in seconds you can select the layers all together, all the ones that are hidden, and they're coming from Rhino entirely organized, so it's great. You can just change the number. If you don't like 0.25, get into the number and say 15. They come thinner and lighter. Another step I will always do is that the thin lines go to the bottom. Now be careful not to place them on inside of a layer, just place them underneath the layers. So you go to the hiddens and taking them down. Hidden down, hidden down, hidden down. What this does is I'm making sure that all the visible are on top of the hidden lines so they don't disturb each other, okay? Now I was changing layers, so I was changing actually everything. I should get rid of the perimeter line. I don't want it anymore. And here's the point where the thickness of the lines are perfect, and you might want to think about whether you keep it clean and very professional as grayscale, or if you want to start thinking of color, and the same steps will be from that point on. Let's say I want these guys and I don't know what layer that is. You can select and see that little square. It means that the layer for the model C and visible is right there. You just select the circle, change the color if you want to a blue, and why not a bit thicker, probably, I don't know, we can test. Could be good, could be not, depending on your scale again. I'm going to go to the model B visible lines. It's right here. Select the entire of them. Change the color, I don't know, to red. Stroke 0.75. Now that didn't change to red, so let's go and select it again. And model B, change it here. There we go. So you probably have to do sometimes 2 times. Now that one's going to be gold and stroke also 75. So for that, in that sense, you could do, for example, the landscape. Let's select it, V, select, make sure which one it is up there, circle. Let's put it red. It's very intense and even thicker than the other ones, like 2. So it's clear that everything is coming from that bottom one. Now this step is where you have to think, is color helping me? Should I implement color to each of the components? I do not recommend placing here annotations, which you could if you were going to organize your entire sheet here, but we're going to do it in InDesign. So I recommend saving this, save, takes a while, okay, and placing this InDesign, this Illustrator file to InDesign, and start placing lines with text, line with text, okay? So this is pretty much the end of your Illustrator work in InDesign. Let me start opening InDesign, and very briefly and very fast I will introduce it to InDesign if it opens fast. Now if you have the time, you can always go save your exploded Rhino file, open your not exploded one, which is render, and render all this, the one we left behind, which is actually the one you're going to be working more with, white and white, okay? The next step is going to be dealing with terrain, so I will probably put the water, the buildings. Now another thing about the buildings is that they're floating. I think somebody noticed it before. You can right click and select objects and move them down a bit, you know, just so you're comfortable with that. Simple step. Choose a very nice camera. You can also change the camera if you want by saying set camera up. Where is it? No. Change this. Adjust lens length. You can go back a little bit, not much, and then zoom in with your Alt right click, and you can create very nice and more aggressive perspectives. Aggressive in the sense of dealing with a stronger lens, no? Probably you want to start thinking of how you incorporate the landmark of the waterfront, the buildings, and making a very nice render, white, and probably just the color for the water if you want, okay? So the last step again, if you have your document ready here, give me a second because I'm kind of recording at the same time, so let me do pages 10. Okay, you go to your new spread, and everybody by now should know that you can always insert pages and say 2, not 20. So the new 2 are going to be your spread where you put your explore analysis. You say Control D, you go to the desktop or whatever you have saved your file, say exploded B, open, it's placed there. We actually did it in a tabloid, so it's pretty much almost the same size. So what you can do is scale it up or down, move it if you want the landscape to be in one side or another, not in the center. Remember, the centers are quite sacred, so you can put it here. And again, remember that if you don't see it correctly, an Illustrator file is always vector based, so it's always high quality. If you press high quality, it's perfect and nice, huh? At this point, you should have several layers. One of them will be like annotation lines, and you can press a line here, a line here, could do a line here, line there, Control C, up, line here, line there. Okay, as you know, I draw that with the P tool, which you should know. I can make it thinner. All those people that had a very strong line in their presentation, this stroke, it changes your lines to thinner, and you can even make them dash line by just saying type dash, and it creates this very nice dash. You can change the color of the lines by selecting them, saying, well, I want a different color. Let's say click there, or you just even change that thicker. And now here's where you start putting your nice text with your perfect font, you know, project, whatever project. You can select the text, press Alt or Control C, Control V. If you press Alt, you can copy directly, always in the same position in relation to the lines, not like I'm doing. And there you go. If I right click here, presentation is not there yet. I have to take care of my fonts, my text, but in general, and in the screen is best seen, not in the projector, those lines are perfectly organized, naming each of the things as I want. So again, annotation lines, annotation text, everything in InDesign. All the line drawing that comes from Rhino Make 2D, we do it in Illustrator. Okay, so that's how you should do the steps. Okay, let me see if the